G'day everyone, Prep Aussie here. I hope you're all well in whatever part of the world you're watching this video. Today is Friday, the 15th of March 2019, and the time here is 0940 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Alright folks, well, I have Dave Lee, Australian Dave Lee, on as regards to an interview today. And we're going to be talking directly about China. Dave is a superior intelligence as regards to what's going on in China. If you watch his internet YouTube site, it's very informative to say the least. So g'day Dave, thanks for coming on. So g'day to everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Prep. This is the first interview I've actually had. It's good to get the technical difficulties out of the way.
My subs have been asking me to get you on for ages. And look, everyone, if you would not believe, we're doing this on Zoom because even Dave's amazed at how much I've been shut out of Skype. I can't use audio on Skype. It's a whole saga. We've had to go to Zoom. We were supposed to do this at 9 o'clock. We've been trying to get it done for 40 minutes now. So here we are. Excuse me for the little thing in the back here. I don't know how to use this yet, Zoom. So Dave's going to be the predominant face you're going to see on this interview. Right, Dave, let's go. Tell us all about I've been advising people of what's going on in China, South China Sea, etc. So, your YouTube channel has amazing content on it about as regards to China and what that entails for us here in Australia. I've been warning people for ages now what's going to happen here in China as regards to China, etc. And some people believe me, some people don't. To the point where I've actually started to call everyone, you need to start arming yourselves, getting militias, etc. because this is going to happen. There's no two ways about it. So do you just want to expand on what you believe is going to happen? Before you do that, Dave has an introduction video on his YouTube site as regards to China. Go on his site and watch that. I'll leave his link in the description box when we're finished on my YouTube site. It's mind-blowing. The propaganda video that Dave shows you should leave everyone under no illusions of where China's going with all this. So Dave, I'll hand it over to you and we'll go from there.
Well, I guess to start with, the most important thing is China is a threat to Australia, 100%. It's the biggest threat to not only Australia, but every other Asian country that surrounds China. The most important point when I speak to Australians is there's a huge difference between the Chinese people and the Chinese Communist Party. This is one of the most important things that I have to get across, because the Chinese Communist Party doesn't necessarily represent the entire populace of China. It's a fascist, authoritarian dictatorship. It is planning to become the Asian hegemon. And the last thing that we need is Australians out there that aren't too educated about China and Asia going and attacking Chinese in the street, because the Chinese people are our greatest ally against the Chinese Communist Party. In my opinion, they're our greatest hope to overthrow this authoritarian dictatorship. We don't want people doing anything to any Chinese or getting confused between Chinese and any other Asians in Australia, because that will feed into the Chinese Communist Party's plan to land. They'll say the Chinese that have immigrated to Australia are not safe. So therefore they'll have to send peacekeepers to come and save their people and land their military on our land. That is a real strategy that would be used.
Well, I've told people this. My wife is half Chinese, and my children are, by default, quarter Chinese, if you want to use that terminology. So I'm well well aware of all that, and I've actually pointed out to people before, we don't have an argument with the Chinese. The problem is the power mad Chinese Communist Party, in my opinion.
Yep. And I guess some of the arguments that I have heard, I guess, what are the arguments that people say? They say, oh, China has never invaded anyone. China's a status quo power. I think if I'm going to try and, I need to disable these arguments so that people can come around. China is not a status quo power, because since, say, the 1970s, China's economic growth has been under the hegemony of the United States. And they've been free to trade, and their ships have not been hampered in sea in any shape or form. And their economic growth has come under the protection, the policing of the sea by the United States. China has, almost on a daily basis, have been threatening Taiwan. They have said that in no uncertain terms that if Taiwan wants independence, they will be invaded by China. That is not a status quo power. That's not someone that is not willing to invade a sovereign, a sovereign country like Taiwan that is also a democracy. It's a peaceful country. Also, the South China Sea. The argument there is that China is South China, so therefore China can do with it what they want. My argument there is, I actually do have a few questions for that. Has America ever threatened China's trade? And I've never seen this in the public discourse anywhere. Has the United States ever threatened, ever commandeered any ships leaving China for their trade? And the answer to that is no. So China's argument that they are militarizing the South China Sea to protect their trade is, it doesn't hold any water, in my opinion. And if you're going to say that they have the right to do whatever they want in the South China Sea, the same argument can be held for South America. Are you trying to say that if China can militarize the South China Sea, America can drop nukes anywhere in South America they want, kill as millions of people if they want? Recently, Trump has been talking about invading Venezuela. Now, if that is something that America could do and feels that it's within their right to do, what's to stop China invading South China, Australia? You see what I'm saying here? Because America is the American hegemon in their region. If China's plan is to become the Asian hegemon, therefore we have a lot in common with Venezuela. So we're a resource-rich nation. We don't exactly have our own Apple or Google or Silicon Valley. The only silicon we do is if you gave that idea to the Australian government, they would get a shovel and go, oh, where's the silicon? Where can we dig the holes? You see, the oil in Venezuela, it's a resource-rich country. It's pretty much exactly the same as us. It's a template for what our future could be if China becomes the Asian hegemon. What's another argument that people have? They have
just before you
economic. Sorry.
Let's just branch out a little bit onto the South China Sea island scenario. Now, I've told people who watch my show, it's literally, I believe from Darwin, it's a 4-hour flight from Singapore to Brisbane or Perth, for example, 4.5 hours. So it's got to be 2 hours from the South China Sea to Darwin, flying. Maybe a bit more. Let's say 2.5. Now, there's something interesting that's been happening of late that I don't know if anyone's actually paid attention. I actually used to turn it off. Clive Palmer, the United Australia Party, has got this video out at the moment. And now, if any of you see this video, it's the one in regards to Karratha and the airport. Now, if you get a chance and that comes up, watch that video. Watch the whole video, because I did that last night and it blew my mind. China's built a fully fledged airport in the middle of nowhere up there, apparently with the what's the name of the Australian government. So this is whether that's true or not, but the airport's there. They've got pictures of it. Now, if you could imagine, and I've said to people before, the very day that they put a permanent military force at the furthest South China Sea port that they've made, and they stock it with troops, destroyers, and a long-range bomber. That's the day that America's going to get pretty nasty, because that means that they can actually fly down and bomb bloody Pine Gap, etc., where the Americans are based, and at Darwin. So, what's your thoughts on that, mate?
There are a lot of spots where they could land planes. So when I saw that, I just thought, okay, well, why not just take out our Air Force and land it on Sydney Airport? It doesn't really matter where. Clive Palmer, he gets the idea, but Clive Palmer he's not quite there yet. Let's just put it that way. He hasn't. I don't think he fully understands the problem. When talking about China, it's good to think about the world from their point of view. Not when me and you are talking, Prep, we're talking from the point of view of Australia looking up. But to understand them, it is probably better to look at Asia from their point of view. And what would they do? And when I look at it through their eyes, I look at their economy, I look at the demographics in the country, I look at their history, the propaganda that's coming out. It makes it easier to understand what their next move will be. And in no uncertain terms, they've made it clear that they want to be the Asian hegemon. And what would be in my interests if I was the Asian hegemon? It would to have an Australia that is poor, and an Australia that doesn't have a powerful Australian dollar. I would rather have the cheapest resources I could get my hands on, and to do that, I'm going to have to collapse the Australian dollar so that I can buy resources cheap. And also a proper invasion, that's old school thinking. I know we're talking about it, but the most successful invasion in the 21st century was Crimea. And I know people will argue that it wasn't really an invasion because most of the people there were Russian. But what is happening in Australia is get as many Chinese here that they can mess with our democracy. And if they can mess with our democracy, if peacekeepers were to land on our land, if they get 51% of the population supporting China, that flag changes, our alliances change, and our currency goes from you and me being able to get on a flight and go on holidays in Bali to people in China coming on holidays here to this third world country. You see, and understanding what money really is. Money is dependent on the United States because we have a dollar, our financial system is connected to them, and it's not in China's interest to have a strong Australia, and it's not in China's interest to have a meddling power like the United States as the maritime power around them. Another argument I'd like to make is that the GDP per capita in Australia is officially in a recession now. We've had 2 quarters of negative growth. Also, it's about $45,000 per capita. That's the GDP per capita in Australia. In China, it's under 7,000. Now, when you look at the numbers, how much land and how much expansion do they need to have for the general population of China to have the same standard of living as an Australian? They need to grab a lot of land, and they need to be an Asian hegemon to provide the people, the populace of China, with the standard of living that they are demanding from their government. So that's why the country has become fascist. They see race as a defining factor. They want to push America out so they can get that money that the government's in a bind now, because they want to provide their people with the best possible lives, standard of living that they can. And when you look at GDP per capita, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And you and me, Prep, we are one of those rocks, and I think that this rock is easier to push than their own people.
So, how, and I mean this in all seriousness, how does this transpire in the future? And specifically, how does the Chinese element here in Australia start to take control, sort of thing, if you know what I mean? Because I'm noticing a lot of people wouldn't even know this, but if you actually read the papers every day now, they're closing someone down from China, closing down news networks, closing down, actually taking visas off people, and there's this all Confucius Institute stuff. So how does this transpire? Because in my opinion, this is actually escalating very quickly here in Australia. Would you agree?
Yes, it is. It's only a matter of years America has left in Asia. So for instance, geopolitics is anarchy. It's like two gangsters doing a drug deal in the street. I guess that's the best metaphor I can come up with, you guys. And the police is the United States. I would pose a question to everybody out there. If you are Japan, if you are Taiwan, if you are any of the neighbors, even Hong Kong, people of Hong Kong, they don't want the Chinese Communist Party running their own country, and they're Chinese. If you ask every country that is surrounded by, that surrounds China, who are they more scared of, a growing China or the status quo and allowing America to be the police? They're far more fearful of China, and they're hoping that America can stop it. So what we have is a coalition growing around China to try and hold them back. I personally think that China's way too smart, and they use their head. They use their head. They don't use their feelings. When I watch the social discourse in Australia, the media, it's all about, I feel this. China doesn't do that. I think 1 + 1 = 2, so I'm going to take action and make something happen. In Australia, it's like, I feel. China is going to pick apart each of these coalitions, the Quad. They're going to pick everything apart as best they can. They're going to take back Taiwan. They're going to try to take the Senkaku Islands off Japan. They're going to dominate the South China Sea and push America out. Now, when that happens, how is this going to play? Now, okay, let's bring it back to home, okay? For the Aussies out there. The Aussies, the gay, she'll be right, mate. Don't worry about it. You guys know New Zealand, right? New Zealand's our neighbour, the Anzacs. What is the glue that holds Australia and New Zealand together? It was Britain and it was the United States. If there's no more hegemon policing us, Australia and New Zealand, their mouths will start watering and we'll be looking at each other. This is how geopolitics plays out. If Australia was left to its own devices, arguably we would invade New Zealand and take it for our own. This is how the world works. I'm a realist here. Now, we also need to keep in mind that our oil is refined in Singapore. And if we are cut off from Singapore, we run out of oil within a matter of days. There won't be any buses running, there won't be any cars running, we won't be able to fuel any planes, and there'll be only a matter of time until we cannot defend ourselves. So we have our own strategic weaknesses as well. That's the ultimate goal. If I was China, I would want to push the United States out. I don't think the United States has the political will to push back against China either. If you look at their history, they got their ass kicked in North Korea when they were the greatest power of all time. They got their ass whooped in Vietnam. The supply lines were too strong and they didn't have the political will. The baby boomers, they were like, no, let's just smoke some weed. And that's why South Vietnam is not rich like South Korea. And they fought all of these battles in the Middle East over oil, which, if you were to point out two spots worth dying strategically in the world today, Europe is not even on the map. Europe is irrelevant to the world when it comes to strategic importance to the United States. You would die in the Middle East for oil, and you would die in East Asia over South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and China. That's where the products are created, oil, and these two spots right there.
In Australia.
Yes, sorry? Australia doesn't necessarily play too much. See, to us, we think we're important.
Oh, yeah.
Strategically, we think we're important. We think, see, there's an illusion. I'm a realist. There's an illusion amongst first world countries that human rights matters and that your life is important. And your life isn't that important. Your life is determinant on how powerful your country is, and might is right. How many Australians talk about feminism and human rights? And then 1.1 million Australians went on a holiday to Bali for sex tourism and drugs last year. And they have this disillusion with feminism and the patriarchy and what about my standard of living and rents are too expensive, and then they go to a third world country and take advantage of 18-year-old girls and use drugs and go on schoolies week. What world are we living in? Like how does that match up in your mind? And then I realized, okay, well, people don't really think that way. I feel human rights matters. But the fact of the matter is, there's no such thing as human rights. Your life, when it's like a country like China that has simple supply and demand, if you have a lot of people, the value of your life decreases.
Yeah.
And human rights is an illusion that liberal democracies like Australia like to tell ourselves. And feminism will be gone in the next 15 years, and human rights will be in the next 15 years. If China keeps expanding, I'd like to see what happens to our sense of feminism and human rights in Australia, because it's going to change.
Mate, I couldn't agree with you more. So let's play this forward a bit. I've told everybody that the jewel in the crown for the Chinese at the moment is Taiwan. I don't understand. I only understand it in the perspective of fascism sort of thing, as you said, that it will be a political boost for the Communist Party to say that they finally took Taiwan back, and create national fervour, if that's the word, within China, and then they can turn around quite easily and say, and we now have the South China Sea, blah, yeah, we're the... So, is that the way you see this playing out?
From the top of Japan, I can't put a map on the screen, I'd like to be able to, but from the top of Japan, through Japan, the island chain links up with Taiwan, and then links up with the Philippines. This is the first island chain of, we call it defense. The United States controls that line. If China takes Taiwan right in the middle of that chain, so again, turn the map and look at Asia from China's perspective. If they can take Taiwan, Japan is isolated. South Korea already has gone silent. In my opinion, South Korea is already in bed with China. So all those people out there buying Huawei phones and watching K-pop and thinking that the South Koreans are... There might be a portion of the populace that believe that South Korea is still with the United States and they got military bases, but they don't want to get involved in anything. They're in the middle of two very powerful countries, and they don't want their standard of living evaporating overnight. If you take Taiwan, you can project power over Philippines. Philippines is pretty much in bed with China already, but you take that, you can almost argue that if Taiwan is taken, the United States is pushed entirely out of Asia. And when that happens, if that happens, I really hope it doesn't, overnight everything will change, because Japan will have to do what they're told, Australia will have to do what they're told, Singapore will have to do what they're told, and the only strategic play that the United States will have will be to join forces with India in the Malacca Straits and blockade China's trade, and then all hell will break loose. Taiwan is, as the United States call it, the unsinkable battleship aircraft carrier. It is sinkable when you have such an enormous behemoth on your doorstep. So I wish I had some good news for you guys.
So let's be honest here. The Chinese, the Communist Party, not the Chinese, the Communist Party in China has already told Taiwan and the rest of the world, this is official, folks, you can actually read this, I've actually had the actual transcript on my videos. They have advised Taiwan that they either do one or two things: declare independence and get invaded, or cede to China and still get invaded and become part of China. There's no third one, which is the Americans waving the flag and taking up China's interest, Taiwan's interest. My question here is, the day Taiwan falls, what happens? As you said, they've got a behemoth sitting at their back door sort of thing. What happens with America? Does America retreat to America, or does America come flag waving and set up base in Singapore and Darwin?
Well, what you have to do is look at the world from a strategic standpoint from the United States. If Taiwan falls, America's still safe. America doesn't need to get involved in anything. And when I look at the public discourse and the disrespect for their president and the Democrats and the Republicans and how they have this almost insane feeling style of public discourse, I don't think that they are the type of people that would risk their lives and the sovereignty of their country for us, or for Taiwan, or for Japan, or anyone, they will be pushed back to try and protect Japan. What it is people have this impression that overnight World War III is going to happen. Bam! Where's the avalanche? Where's the weak point in the mountain? No. We have been seeing this for the last 20 years, a gradual expanse of China. It's gradual. You can actually see it slowly growing. So Taiwan arguably would go next. A lot of pressure is being put on Singapore. These are two very important strategic locations for China. They're also very important for the United States for the exact same reasons. The United States will be pushed back into Japan. The Japanese are very scared. They're getting in bed with India. They're on two other sides of the world. We've united a quad. There's Australia, Japan, and India. If something goes down in Japan, how long will it take for India to arrive? And will they arrive? So how long would it take Australia to arrive to try and save Japan? That's what we've signed up for, by the way. That's what the quad means.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Japan, something happens to Japan, we have to fight to the death to defend Japan. Another point I'd like to make is that China, we know that China is a manufacturing country. They build things faster than anyone else. If you look at Sydney CBD, we can't even build a light rail in a decade. These guys, in 24 hours, 48 hours, I've seen them build a bridge. You can actually build a bridge in China in 48 hours. This is the reality of China. So when you look at from a military standpoint and an economic standpoint, just say America is like, okay, we're going to do something about it now. America might have the edge now. When we're all licking our wounds, as what happened between World War I and World War II, who do you think is going to build their military faster? You think America or Australia that can't build anything ourselves is going to rebuild our military faster than China? What will happen is there'll be, if there was to be an engagement, it will be a huge engagement. The West would only just win. And then China will rebuild everything 10 times faster than any of us, and we'll be slapped back in the face before we've even built our first tank or even tin shed or boat. And if you think that anyone in Europe is going to come and save us, you need your head read, because economically Europe is in a lot of pain. Do you think Europe is going to spend a lot of money on building a military to come down here and save us? These are fornops that Europe is engaging in. I hate to say it, I don't see them sacrificing lives for us when they've got economic problems of their own. I went to France just before the Yellow Vest movement went nuts over there, and that brings me to another point. Sorry, Prep. I know I've got a short amount of time, and I just have so much that I need to talk about, so I keep talking until stop me.
Mate, we can always do part 2, so don't panic.
Okay. Oh, well, I could talk for 5 hours. Nationalism is a problem in Australia. It is a huge problem in Australia. I gotta say, when someone can carry an Australian flag and be beaten up in the street and be called a right-wing activist or something ridiculous like that, that's evidence that we are not a patriotic country. And the glue that holds the country together is it's nationalism. It is the most effective glue that holds the country together. When you become ultra-nationalist, you move into fascism. That's the spectrum, okay? China is now a fascist country. Australia isn't even nationalist. And because the media wants to call anyone that carries an Australian flag whatever they call us, it's evidence that we're not patriotic. And if anything was to go down, do you think we would fight together? Do you think we would get together and build the supply lines? Do you think we would do our best for the war effort? Or if we need our economy collapses, do you think we would unite and work really hard to rebuild this economy? Or do you think that the yellow vest will hit the streets and then we'll become a third world country through our own bad behaviour? The more I talk about Australia, and I'm doing my best to try and unite Australia and let people know that we need to be patriotic, the more I realise that it's not going to happen. And if we have any trouble, I dare say it, if you don't like your neighbour, you don't like your neighbour's race or religion, or you don't like immigrants, or the immigrants come here and they don't like white people, and there's all this divide within Australia, how do we expect to unite when we have the greatest battle that Australia has ever come up against in our history? We're sitting ducks.
Yeah, look, I've mentioned that before. We have you'd have 3 or 4 distinct breakaway groups here in Australia, for no other reason except the fact that we're not nationalistic anymore. It would be based more on race and religion, sadly, than nationalism. And this is all the while, as I've mentioned to people before, don't forget that we have one of the world's biggest militaries, in Indonesia, just itching. And I mean itching for the day that they can take Darwin in the top end. There's no two ways about it. They would probably fly straight into Perth Airport, folks. There's no two ways about it. And the rest of the world, and Australians need to understand this because we're so pig ignorant about this as well. The rest of the world sits there and watches us complain about population growth, etc., when we've got a country as big as America and we only have 23 million people, 24, and they think we're insane. They think we should have 100 million people living here. That's the rest of the world, and they've actually stated that we should have 100 million people living here in Australia. Doesn't matter where they come from; they should be here. So people need to understand this sort of stuff. And as you said, when you start doing these type of shows and everything else, you realise that you're only talking to maximum 2%, 1% of the population who understand what's happening. So you've got 98%, 99% of the population who are just not interested. And as you said, demographically, the Democrats in America and the Republicans in America, they are literally poles apart at the moment. And would they come to the aid of Australia? Republicans might. Democrats, we don't want a war. We don't want to go and help anyone. We don't want to die. What's in it for us, sort of thing. That would be the first thing that comes out of their mouth. What's in it for us? And we are a jewel, as much as Taiwan is a jewel, we are a jewel in either Indonesia or China's crown. There's no two ways about it. And can I just say that if people aren't paying attention to what's happening in Indonesia, you've got Russian nuclear destroyers, aircraft carriers, etc., have been and gone in there the last couple of months, and they are now using it as a base as they float around the world, and China. So you need to understand that when we're talking sensibilities here, it's a possibility now. It's not going to happen, folks. You need to wake up and smell the roses. Simple as that.
I'd like to. You made some good points there. People talk about Australia just trading with China, just ignore America, and that's the argument of economics versus politics. Now, this is why Australia is run by the banks and the business sector. That's how Australia is run, and I think someone who doesn't agree that China is the biggest threat, they will agree that Australia is run by the banks. Now, big business thinks that we should just sit back, get rich, and trade with China. They're not thinking further down the track. If America gets pushed out, China, from hierarchical sense, all the way at the top, all the way down to the average Chinese in the street, if you go and trade with them, they will try to get the best deal out of you. So if you go to some little market in China, they will see you as a foreigner, and it will cost 5 times more than the local Chinese because they know they can rip you off. Now, if we have trouble with China, who do we call? We call 911. We call the United States because they're the police. When the United States is pushed out, it is exactly the same as 2 drug dealers. One drug dealer is really big and has a ton of guns, and you're coming over and trying to trade with them, and you say, okay, well, it's 20K for the cocaine or whatever it is. And China, the one with all the guns, says, oh, no, I think we'll give you $100. What are you going to say about that? Okay, we'll take the $100. And you're like, oh, okay, take the resources for $100. And then your GDP collapses, your dollar collapses, foreign direct investment collapses, all of these bankers disappear. And if I was talking to someone going to university right now, I wouldn't be focusing on being a banker or going into finance. All of those bankers in Martin Place in Sydney CBD, they will be poor soon. And all of the drinking that happens on a Friday, Saturday night in Sydney CBD, that will cease. And they will be replaced with guys that have a Kubra hats on, the farmers. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but I think farming is the future of Australia, and I'm seeing a lot of evidence of that. They will be partying in Sydney CBD in the future. If I was to predict that commodity exploding. Another point is, what would America do? So from America's point of view, if it heats up, they don't have the political will to even go into any sort of austerity and pay back their debts. Do you think that these... America's got fat and lazy. Okay? They don't want to fight anyone's battle. They don't want to do anything. They just want to have a good life and let it... This is the tragedy of intergenerational geopolitics. This generation is like, look, if we get another 50 years out, me and my children will be fine. Who cares about the next generation? And that's why America's thinking right now. So if they can just shrink back to America and be the Asian hegemon, they will still have a powerful American dollar. They'll be able to control Canada all the way down to Brazil. But my argument there is, and China will have the freedom for their ships to enter the huge amount of water between America and China. And if there's any Americans out there, if you allow China to become the Asian hegemon, they will have this BRI that connects them with Europe, and they will have the freedom to roam anywhere in the Americas. And as we know about BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and now South Africa, Brazil has really good demographics to become a rich country. And if I was China, I would be trading the hell with them so that they can be a big nightmare for America in 50 years' time. And if it plays out the way I see it, America will be locked. They'll be locked. They will not have the freedom to roam over here anymore because they'll be fearing this growing Brazil. And this is how the world works, people. Demographics and trade routes and what they can do with their demographics. And I think Brazil is a big threat to the United States. They might, in 50 years' time, not be able to send a ship over to Australia anymore. And China was trading with Canada, big time. And Canada is part of our alliance, Team Blue. they have not helped at all. They have not helped at all. Are they building a navy? Is Canada helping out in any way, shape, or form? So when people look at Huawei and they think this is all about Huawei, if you see the world the way I do, it was an opportunity to drive a wedge between Canada and China because, in a way, America is already planning for shrinking back to America and controlling their region.
Yeah, yeah.
You got to see, if you see the world in geopolitical terms like I do, the news that you see looks very different to what you're told.
Yeah, you just
another point.
Your eyes.
Another point, I brought this in to you guys. This is what we call silver. It's heavily undervalued at the moment. I'm not selling you guys silver. I just have some silver on hand. Silver's heavily undervalued. If the currency was to collapse and go into hyperinflation like what happened in Venezuela, perhaps you'll be able to go down the shops and buy your weekly shopping with one of these if the Australian dollar is worth nothing. Another option is, I also brought this one in to you guys today. You can just get a ring of pure gold. Okay? Now, you need to think to yourself, if hyperinflation kicks in, what will happen to money? What will happen to the Australian dollar? You can buy yourself this gold ring, and you string it up, and you put it around your neck. And when you get on a plane to get the hell out of Australia, you can take it with you and they won't tax you because it's jewelry. That's a very valuable tip. I went through a bit of a spree and I sent these to family members. This is like water, like a little water tube just in case you run out of water. I bought myself like 100 liters of water just in case. This is conspiracy theory 101. I know it might be going over the top, but it's better to be prepared because from what I've seen, when you start thinking that there's a possibility of something and you see how naive the people around you really are, shit could get real fast. Also got like a little flint here, but if you're in jail, what is money? That's what you got to ask yourself. What is money? So why not stock up on a ton of cigarettes or even other things that you could trade if you're going to hyperinflation? I got a flint thing. You can just buy yourself a lot of lighters, I guess. I don't personally smoke. I don't smoke or drink or do any drugs or anything like that. But if you were to stock up on that and something was to go down, I'm sure someone down the street might trade that for something valuable with you. So this is another way to look at the world. Also, if something goes down in Australia, I wouldn't be sitting out in the country at all. I would be making my way to the CBDs where the highest population is because that's where all the food will go. That's where the richest people are. That's where the food will go. That's where the supplies will go. You're stuck out in the country, you're kind of out there on your own.
I've actually warned people in Perth, and people need to understand this. If at any stage we get blockaded or there's a war up South China Sea, anything like that, you are living in the most isolated place on the planet. And if you think the boats are going to come and deliver refined oil, food, goods and services, you are literally nuts. I'm sorry to say that, and if you don't have a plan, if you're awake, as you said, then you should be in a car and gone a month before the shit really hits the fan. And you should be over east somewhere, because if you stay over west, you're going to be in a dire situation in Perth, because there's nothing is going to get to Perth. Mate, look, I'll let you say one more thing, and then we'll have to go.
This book here. This was written by Michael Pillsbury. He's a research fellow with a PhD in the United States. This book, I think, gives the overarching method that China's using right now. if you were to read this, it's written by an academic, not written by some crazy conspiracy theorist. The 100-Year Marathon. Google it, read it. Don't take it for us. Me and Prep are just a few idiots on the internet. Take it from an academic, right? And also, if you want to wonder what's happening with Australia's property at the moment, Irrational Exuberance, written by, he got the Nobel Prize in Economics in the United States. I think it's very relevant to what's happening in Australia today, in different terms, but give you a bit of a point, explain what a bubble really is.
What I'd like to do, Dave, is get you on to do an interview part 2. Now we've discussed China and how that's all going to play out in now and in the future. What I would like to do is get you back on and basically focus on the Australian demographic. And just, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on how this is going to play out in Australia, where everything's going to go, the power plays in Australia, etc., because the politics as we know it, folks, is non-existent anymore. So it'd be interesting to hear Dave's views on that. So maybe I'll get you back next week and we'll do part 2 of the interview if that's okay, because I've literally run out of time now. Zoom's going to shut us down in a second. You only get 40 minutes, I think. And it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on moving forward with that, mate, if we could.
No worries. I thoroughly enjoyed this, having a conversation. It's so much easier to get more information out when talking to someone than creating YouTube videos. This was an absolute pleasure being able to converse properly, and hopefully we can do it more often.
Yep, mate, 1 second. I'm just going to put you on hold, and I always finish up with the prayer, so I'll do that. Just 1 second. Okay, folks, and as always, we'll finish this interview up with the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Okay, Dave. Well, that's it for today, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and I look forward to doing part 2 with you next week so we can talk about Australia and how it's all going to play out in Australia. I hope you've got some out of this as well, mate, and the more people we reach in Australia, the better, obviously. That's why we're doing this as well, folks, so more of you can get this message out, please. Dave and I are actually screaming from the rooftops. That's why we actually wanted to do this interview as well, so more of you can get information out to people. All right, Dave. Well, thanks very much, mate, and we'll see you on the next interview.
Thanks, Brad. Absolute pleasure.